right, so it's been exactly a year since I got my picture authenticated, and I drove all the way up to San Francisco, and then it shut down completely, like a day or two later. And then all of California and then just everywhere else shut down. But as far as authenticating photographs, I mean, if there's already a photo of somebody, kind of like here's a photo of Brigham Young, it just even for a novice, it's not that hard to know someone is the same person, but without an actual photo to compare to, it can just be quite a bit harder. But yeah, my whole journey really started with we have pictures of Brigham Young. I've heard maybe there's pictures of Joseph Smith that I didn't really know. And so when I got this authenticated a year ago, I still was on the fence whether I thought my picture was the daguerreotype that Joseph Smith III talked about. So when I started analyzing my photo, I knew nothing about that. And then after I bought it and talked to the church history department, then they sent me the scholarly article, and then I found that letter and read other blogs and just things other people had found. But then you find their sources and you can find that book and all that other stuff. So I can just link other videos where I go in depth to what William B. McCrawl's theories, what he goes into, and how I really was being pushed to know what I thought about stuff, and I don't agree with him. But I'm becoming more open-minded that maybe Joseph Smith III did take a version of my picture, maybe a daguerreotype, and edit the RLDS painting. That's where I'm at, and I'll go into that in a second. But so this guy was recommended to me by someone who, I think it was a person that I talked to a lot of people that used to own Julia Murdoch Smith's photo album, and so he was really nice, and he even was on the juvenile instructor. So a lot of these bigger people were on that website, but nobody liked my photo but me, and then I bought it and just, but I can easily prove that I didn't. It's not that hard to prove I knew nothing about it in 2009 when it already was being talked about by the eBay seller back then. So, but this guy recommended someone. He just did he's like, let me research. I can find the professionals, because I think I talked to some universities. I'm trying to remember now, and they're like, oh, we don't do that. We don't authenticate photos. I'm like, who do I go to? And I couldn't find anyone, so then I reached out to this guy, and then he recommended someone from Beverly Hills. And then I talked to that person and said I was talking to some scientists and just different people like that were maybe going to do something. Might not, don't know, but they might, and this guy's like, Godwin Weaver, who's you want to see, but he was far away. But I called him and talked to him about just everything I know about my photo, everything I know about the person, because it's all about showing that it's real and not fake. And so, like how anyone that's LDS has watched the documentary on Netflix about Mark Hoffman and all that stuff that happened, and we've come a long way, and so he talked about how hard and easy it is sometimes to know if something's fake, and he says he can usually see something, but it's all a lot more high tech than it was in 85 when I was like 3 years old. And so I just told him all about this guy that sold it to me, and he's like, yeah, he doesn't sound like a Mark Hoffman. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so either, but I get why people judged him, and he was an easy target, easy person to make fun of, which is unfortunate, and I think members of the church, just if someone's clearly not a member of the church, which, seeing his Facebook page, he's not the person that sold it to me. But yeah, he spent a really long time analyzing it and measuring it, the thickness of the paper. I knew it was a Carte de Visite, and one person had told me it was 1860s, but he verified that and just gives his reasons why. This is not the high resolution of this image he sent me. I actually just took a screenshot, and that's what I have on my iPad right now. But anyway, the gold tone albumin prints were like early 1860s. And so he verifies what I've shown, that it's J.S. Bibbins is who you see on the back of the picture. And on the back, you see Newark, Illinois, which if you watch my very first video, I'm like, well, there were some saints there. That's all I knew. And then like a year, I don't know, 6 months later, then I found out Joseph Smith III, or I think I first found out about J.S. Bibbins and his father Elisha, knowing Emma. Then I bought memoirs of Joseph Smith III, and then I started reading about the sons. Like, it's, my videos would change and then I would get rid of them because I'd be wrong about something. And that's just been my journey, and it's just been really raw and honest. So I've basically been like vlogging things that I find out as I research. I'm really just an artist that is a medical assistant who knows some medical terminology and all that stuff. But it was really fun to go up there. It was like a 14-hour drive day. We talk about yellowing of the image, consistent with gold tone albumin prints. And so the albumin, it's sort of like an egg, something like, I don't know all the chemicals they use, but it's a little bit shiny. And so I first bought it. I mean, I was kind of a brat. I was like, this is small. This was several $100s and it's small, and it's, oh no, it's not from the 1840s. Like, I just knew nothing. But in 1 week, I found out that was okay, because M.S. Smith's 1845 picture was copied onto an 1860s Carte de Visite. So, but then, you know, when after he just sat down and typed for a long time, it wasn't until he handed it to me that I read that he thought it was copied from a daguerreotype, which I was becoming open to, but I just was hardcore thought that my picture was always a paper photograph, because Henry Fox Talbot did invent paper photography the same time that Daguerre invented daguerreotypes on metal in the wrong perspective, like in reversed around. But paper photography was always in the correct perspective, because he always had this calotype process where they could flip it around. So then when I read that, I was like, oh no, like, I've always had these oh no moments. So when he handed this to me, I remember having my oh no moment and just asking him all these questions and probably frustrating him, because he's like, this is not a class, but he does teach. He teaches this. People can, he'll recommend buying microscopes so you can analyze and collect and see if something's real, you know. He just teaches, he restores old photos and makes them look good and new. But he studied chemistry. You know, he's a really smart guy. And that's why I drove up there and went to him. So you can look at his website. You can find that information there. But yeah, he thought it was copied from a daguerreotype. And so with the daguerreotype reversing prism, it won't be in the wrong perspective, because he explained, and then I researched, that they did sometimes take pictures of buildings that maybe have writing on them, or landscape, or just things that you want to be in the right perspective, and they knew it wasn't. And so they quickly figured out a device to make it in the correct perspective. Or they take a daguerreotype of a daguerreotype, and then it's in the right perspective, because it's flipping it back around, you know. And then you take a Carte de Visite of that second daguerreotype, maybe. And then he talks about the quality. There's a crease that I could always see. And it looks like that happened when they were putting it on the mount. And the albumin edge is just, talks about the thickness of the print itself. Moderate gloss level consistent with the early 1860s. As foxing, so it's near some place with high humidity is what he thinks. He can tell that it was in an album. So this guy that sold it to me said it was from a Smith family album, and I just, talking to Gawain, I was just like, there's no way that this guy created this and looked at the death mask and like photoshopped and then made it look, you know, real. Because where are the other photos that look like someone? You know, and according to Gawain and other people, like people that are like Mark Hoffman's today, I mean, most of them are not killing people. But anyone that's lying gets into a lie, they might become violent and crazy. So, but, you know, mostly do pictures of like Abraham Lincoln. I guess there's a ton of fake photos of Abraham Lincoln around. But this guy, his store looked the same in 2017. I know a lot of you out there saw his store 2017, 2018 before he took it down because people were getting mad at him. Probably saw my website and thought he was, I don't know, deceiving people or something. Because he had a different picture he thought was Joseph Smith. And, but he had a picture of Emma that looked nothing, she looked really young and didn't have her nose, didn't have her face shaved, didn't have her eyes, And then one of Frederick, we have photos. So we have photos of Emma. We have paintings of Emma, but most importantly, we do have photos of Emma Smith. And one of Frederick Smith, we have photos of him, and I just don't agree with some photos he thinks are Frederick Smith. But it was interesting that I kicked myself over. I should have I didn't have any money, though. I think I took my whole paycheck and bought this. Yeah, I'm crazy. And none of my friends agreed with me, and neither did my family. But I took photos of the box, and this guy, again, I don't think he's violent. He has a lot of cats, and so it was covered in cat hair, and it had a little bit of kitty litter in there. And I was scared. I was worried that it was like, whatever that, something poisonous. So but I put on gloves and wore a mask when I opened it. I was afraid to touch it for a week. So that's another reason why it took me a week to study the clothing style. So it's really mostly just been an entertaining and uplifting thing to study. And so, but yeah, he talks about no pronounced cracking of the albumin surface consistent with the thinner albumin coatings of the early 1860s, vertical streaks above and below, which, again, this is bad screenshot of, you've seen my picture, just look at my website. And I'm going to have a new one up soon, but, it appears to be a discolored adhesive, most likely a starch or gum that was used to mount the photograph, like back then. So after that, and I think even though it's been a year and I get frustrated, like nothing's going anywhere, I get impatient, but then I get asked questions and sometimes I get frustrated, but then I'm like grateful that someone pushed me or asked me questions, because now I know what I think about the whole theory here with William B. McCarl. And so the more I look at my picture, which I've taken here, and I can just kind of move it around, did Carter really see a photo and then do a drawing? I mean, I really think he looked at the painting because it looks exactly like the painting here, this drawing. But when I've taken my picture here and just reversed it like a daguerreotype would be flipped around, the original, if we're going on that theory that it's a daguerreotype of a daguerreotype and then a carte de visite. Looking at the vest, I mean, it's a little too dark probably, but Emma Smith's 1845 daguerreotype right now is about this oxidized, about that dark. You can almost see nothing on it. So it almost looks like the body's angled that way. And it's hard to tell if it's a pop-down collar. A little bit harder to tell, especially where the light hits that other part of the collar. You can sort of see, well, maybe they think it came up that high on his face, But there's no denying that this Carter drawing is according to the 1885 article, you can watch my other video, people in Utah that knew Carter said in 1885, which William B. McCarl skipped over, even though he had that same source, you can find that whole article online and see, no, some people that met Emma looked at the painting, looked at this, and saw that, Utahns had a lot of these daguerreotypes of the painting, and I know I'm a broken record, but I guess this is the issue of the day. Could this, my image, maybe flipped around, maybe a little bit darker, because I theorized maybe Joseph Smith III didn't get to own or have for longer than 2 seconds the original either Carte de Visite or daguerreotype of his father. That I theorized that there was a Carte de Visite, and I theorize and think that my picture is it. When I look at it this way, darkened, like it could be. I definitely don't think a basis of everything I've read about the painting, what they said in 1885, it really sounds like there's a whole story of David Rogers being physically with Joseph Smith, doing the whole painting. That maybe editing it because it's cracking and getting old and changing it by looking at a picture. Yeah. And maybe suddenly the vest and the jacket looks a little bit similar, and the features in his face and everything, I can see it. So yeah, just having a daguerreotype to edit, but Carter, I don't think Carter took my picture and did a whole drawing based on my picture. And then again, the 1885 article debunks what William B. McCarl said. And, he was a smart guy, but he even wasn't a scholar. He was an artist. I'm an artist, he just had access to a bunch of things and wrote an article and came up with his theories, which on this page, it turns into this whole story of a ring and how Joseph Smith III didn't think his dad wore a ring on his right hand, but the own painting it did. And so then they decided that it was a daguerreotype that was in the wrong perspective used as a basis for the whole painting, because they think the ring was on the left hand, but it was based and completely done by majors who did not see Joseph Smith in life. And then that suddenly turns all these witnesses in 1885 who knew Emma before she died in 1879. So it's just 6 years before that article. That's where I'm getting super opinionated about. And this is probably super boring thing, but this is McCarl's whole theory right here. We're suddenly saying Dan Wegelin, but yeah, they say in 1885 Dan Wegelin does this picture based on the daguerreotype of the painting. So, I mean, it's 1885, but those are people that, just 10 years before saw Emma, saw the painting, heard this story. And these are too similar. I used to think that this was the basis of it because everyone said that in a blog because they read this, the basis of these other portraits. But that's just not correct. If you find the actual sources, which you can find the whole books of all these articles from Salt Lake. You can find the memoirs of Joseph Smith III and read it. Anyway. But yeah, I've gotten that figured out this whole last year. That's sort of been the thing of being, open-minded to my picture. I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm if this guy Gowan Weaver thinks that, now I'm okay. He knows a lot more than me. He knows how to tell if a picture is, he just really was adamant that there's no way that this was the original. He's he would have to be absolutely awful photographer. And then I showed him J.S. Bibbin's other work and yeah. So, although I didn't necessarily pay and write down everything he said, so I'm just paraphrasing and can't say that's an exact perfect quote, but it was exciting and it was really literally in the nick of time, and just the fact I even had money to get this done was a miracle, and I'm just glad I was able to get that done. And I still have other people that have other pictures that want money, but I guess we've decided, I don't know, probably just don't even need some things, I guess. I don't know. But again, if you want to help me, you can buy some copies of my picture, and it would help. it would help if, it's just I'm not calling the shots on what other people are going to do. So anyway, thanks for your time, and you have a good day.